Mic up now so we have live sound so people can hear us. And we'll bring the timer down. And here we are. So come on in. There you are.
There I am.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Breakfast with Disaster. We are live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. With a very simple mission. We tell you about all the worst things that can happen to you so you know how to avoid them. We know that because we're Serve Pro and we clean them up. We've got a special guest here today, the one, the only Chris Stohl. Saddle on in.
Yeah, good morning.
So Chris is the founder of Stohl Environmental, which you said been around, 34 years?
34 years I've been doing this. My license says 1988 on there, so,
Yeah. So Stohl, we work with Stohl all the time. If you've ever worked with us, you've probably worked with Stohl for inspection, consulting, remediation of various types, abating asbestos, lead, mold, any kind of environmental concerns really are kind of in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, we started with asbestos, and then as items come up, a client has a concern, lead-based paint started up, and, now we're dealing with some of these emerging contaminants that you see. People are worried about their plastics, PFAS. Lead in drinking water was a big issue for school districts over the past 5 to 6 years with some regulations that came out there.
Wow. Well, we are going to talk about specifically asbestos, but all of that sounds scary. I just want to say good morning to everybody who's hopping on. We got a good crew today. Lynn, Devin, Jennifer Greenfield too, Brianna Sawa, Michael Bloom, Diane, Lisa, and Melissa. Everybody's hopping on. Good to see you. We are going to talk about asbestos today, and it's something that hopefully you guys don't deal with as much as we do. We probably deal with it every single day. It is important, and most of the folks watching this are either insurance agents, insurance adjusters, or property managers. And if you deal with property damage in like any capacity, asbestos is not just like a wrench that gets thrown. It's like the wrench that can sometimes get thrown in fixing it, or doing any sort of demolition or any sort of construction. It can make things take way longer. It can cause projects to get way more costly than they were originally scoped at when you have to deal with it, abate it, test, or whatever. And most people kind of know what it is. You've probably seen a commercial at 3 a.m. for like a lawyer talking about mesothelioma and starting a class action lawsuit. But what's the actual deal? I've found that most people don't know. So Chris is going to kind of give us our asbestos 101 here real quick in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I won't take a lot with this because a lot of people actually do probably know what it is, but it is asbestos is a mineral and it is mined out of the ground, and then it was mixed into products. So asbestos made everything better, just like that BASF tape. Remember that commercial 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, where we don't make the product, we make everything better, and that's what asbestos did. So you mixed it into, it was in brakes because it made brakes better. It was in plaster because it made plaster stronger. It was in caulk because it made caulk last longer in the sun. Any product that you used in building, there was probably somebody that tried to put asbestos into it. Sometimes mostly successfly making that product better and more durable. And sometimes the asbestos didn't actually do that much and help. But the problem then is we have all these products out there which have asbestos in it, historically in structures, and then it gets disturbed during renovation or demolition. So as you guys get a phone call, we have a water damage. We were on vacation, and the water on the second floor tub had been running for a week, and we got to take down the kitchen, the bathroom, the dining room, down into the basement. There's mold growing all over the place. Well, how many items got wet at that point and need to be removed, covered with mold or something? And of those items that are now wet, which of them could contain asbestos? So let's just take maybe a bathroom tub. You've got then your plaster or drywall on the second floor and the first floor. You might have ceiling tiles on the first or second floor. Maybe those ceiling tiles were contaminated with not with water, but maybe they grew mold on them because you had some high humidity conditions in there. Perhaps above that second floor ceiling, you've got vermiculite. In New York State, as we all know, New York State regulates everything to the extreme, more so than other states. Things they don't need to regulate, sometimes they appear to regulate. And so one of the things that they've done is they've said that vermiculite is since it cannot be identified as not containing asbestos accurately, so since it cannot accurately be identified. Therefore, it has to be assumed to be asbestos when it's in its raw and unmixed form. So just a little bathroom water damage can result in, say, asbestos plaster maybe being disturbed, maybe ceiling tiles, floor tile in the kitchen down below the second floor bathroom, maybe pipe insulation in the basement. So all those materials require testing prior to Servpro going in and doing a gut rehab job there.
So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, and I would say anybody watching, if you have asbestos-related questions, asbestos-containing questions, I should say, make a little pun out of it, and I see some more people jumping on, let us know. The question I get in that exact scenario, my tub's been running for 2 weeks, and my house is trashed, and it's waterlogged, and it's covered in mold. And then, I come in and say, hey, before we do anything, we need to test this stuff and make sure it doesn't have asbestos in it. The answer I usually get, and I'm sure a lot of the insurance agents would get here if they had the same conversation with their insured, is like, it's not even really a response. It's like, come on, are you serious? Like, do we really have to do this? People want to get up and go, and they're like, if I pulled this stuff out, I wouldn't have to test it. All of a sudden, you're coming in here and telling me I have to wait to deal with this. I have to pay more to get it tested. Why? How would you answer that question?
Well, it is a requirement. So it's a requirement of New York State and the federal government. So the EPA regulates it, OSHA regulates it, and New York State Department of Labor regulates it. The penalties for not testing and determining if something is free of asbestos are significant. The EPA penalties, they don't often come in and penalize somebody and issue these fines, but they're $30,000 per day per violation. The real monetary penalty, though, really happens when you get somebody that chooses not to test for it.
Right.
Then they disturb it. There was a case recently where we were involved now on the backside on the cleanup of this environmental. What was just a water loss and then turned into a small environmental disaster on a residential scale.
And this was not us, by the way, I should say.
Right, yeah. So it was not Servpro. It was another group I know the name of. I won't really tell what the name of that group is, but they came in and removed a kitchen ceiling. Above that kitchen ceiling was vermiculite. Then, there was water damage, so they put their blowers and dehumidifiers in there. So they took and blew vermiculite containing asbestos throughout this person's entire house. This person happened to be a video game collector.
Okay.
And a movie collector.
All right.
So they had thousands of titles of movies. They had arcade games throughout their house. The house was more like an arcade than a house. It was a guy living alone, a bachelor. So I guess you can do that if you don't have anybody else you're living with. But all of that stuff got contaminated with asbestos. He made the call to the Department of Labor, the homeowner, once he kind of figured this out. Department of Labor came out, shut the whole thing down, red tagged the job, issued citations and violations to the contractor that didn't test for this material, and then other contractors got called in to clean it up. We were one of the contractors that got called in to clean up or provide a proposal. Our proposal was accepted. Apparently our number was good. And all told, they were into the $40,000 plus range in the cleanup of these materials before they started putting the house back together.
Mm-hmm. So I think I want to put a fine point on this because I think it's a really striking example. It was a relatively simple water damage project.
Yeah, 100 square feet or less, kitchen, ceiling.
And because somebody didn't feel like or want to or see the need to test and abate before they just started slicing and dicing, it turned into an entire whole house environmental catastrophe into the five figures.
Yeah, I bet you by the time, so then they gutted the ceilings and walls. We still had all that. By the time they're all said and done, what do you think? Something like that, over $100,000.
Right.
A loss that could have been, I don't know, maybe $5,000.
Yeah, and not to mention, hopefully there's no actual health consequences, but there's a reason why this regulation exists is because there can be.
Yeah, it is, right. And so, people, some people are not so worried about asbestos, and in the short-term acute exposure, chances of, say, getting a cancer from a one-time event are low. But then on the other hand, sometimes people become frightened of it, and they have a long-term worry, and that's real for people. Just because it's in their head doesn't mean it's not real, right?
Sure. I think we see that every day. There's there's a psychological and emotional
Yeah.
factor to this, and how would you feel if you didn't know for sure that your home was safe and free of a contaminant like that?
Right.
If you didn't know 100%, you would be, I mean, that would be traumatic for some people, a lot of
Right.
people.
Right. Now that's one of the scary situations. A lot of times, most certainly when we're doing work with ServPro, our job is to surgically come in and facilitate the environmental issues so that you guys can do your job, making as few waves as possible, keeping the cost to a minimum, while at the same time safely removing just the asbestos that's in the way. So most of the time, you guys would say have a water loss in a kitchen sink, and it wets the floor in the kitchen, and you've got some underlayment there. You've got some water that's deeply embedded that can't be dried out. So we might be dealing with a kitchen floor tile asbestos issue there. And those, as you know, we're in and out pretty quick. You set up your containment, your negative air pressure, HEPA filtering, decontamination chambers, systems, respiratory protection, Tyvek suits, all that kind of stuff, and then we'll remove the kitchen floor and get final air samples from another third-party consultant that's not associated with us. They check our work, and then once that's clean, you guys come back in and do your good work.
Awesome. It really is. It's an important process. It's definitely a process, but you have to make, especially if you're potentially exposed to it all the time.
Yeah.
Like you said, you really have to be careful.
Yes. So my guys, we pay huge workers' compensation premiums, 33%, $33 per hundred. So if I pay an employee $100, I pay the insurance company $33.
There are a lot of insurance agents right now taking this note down so they can write you a quote.
Yeah, it's 33. Well, it's hard to write a quote. Nobody wants to touch us. We'll take the quotes, but nobody wants to touch us. Nobody wants to touch anybody in our field. We do safe work, and we're not a high risk compared to others, but it's a small market. And I'm not sure I was going to that, but we have high workers' compensation rate, and that's what drives up the cost. The thing is, the guys that work for me are protected from asbestos. They deal with it every day, but they're trained to know how to deal with it. When they're getting into asbestos, into the removal, into anything that would disturb it, they put their masks on, they protect their lungs. Where the people that really that really run into asbestos and are not protected are those plumbers, those electricians, those carpenters that go back in and do renovations without testing. They do that on a regular basis. They run into some huge asbestos exposures on a regular basis, just taking up flooring. Linoleum floor, for instance, is a very friable backing material. Plaster. So you don't think, a lot of people don't realize that plaster has asbestos in it some of the time. Regular house plaster from the 20s, 30s, 40s into the 70s can contain asbestos in the plaster itself. How much percentage, after 34 years testing thousands of houses? Probably, 3 to 5% of the time. If we sampled 100 houses, we'd find 5 of them with asbestos plaster.
Right.
And drywall joint compound. That's a beauty, because they started with gypsum products. So gypsum systems started as plaster phased out in the 60s.
Right.
So you're not going to find a 1950s house with gypsum board walls. You'll find gypsum lath behind the plaster, but not the gypsum with the skim coat of joint compound. So in the late 60s, all through the 70s, and certainly up until now, we're building things with gypsum. But late 60s up until about 75, 73, 74, in that zone, if you had a house built in that period, most of the time, more than 50% of the time, you're going to have asbestos in the joint compound of that material, because it made that joint compound so much better. Made it easier to spread, easier to finish, probably less cracking involved, and very prevalent. So that's one of the things. So where a plumber goes in and says, "I'm just going to whack through this wall," Well, the 1972 house, okay, you probably just whacked through a whole bunch of friable asbestos.
And I do want to mention, because I know this is a common misconception about testing for asbestos, there's not like a time like a cutoff. Like some people will say, okay, this house was built before 1974. We have to test it. After, we don't. That might make things more or less likely, but that doesn't circumvent the law.
Right. Yes. So technically, if you built a house yesterday and decided to tear it down today, you would have to test that house before you tore it down. Obviously, a lot of people don't do that kind of thing, but the regulations are actually written that way. Asbestos was phased out, not completely. It's still, it's still not illegal, but it's not advisable for a manufacturer to use it anymore. So
right.
No gypsum, United States Gypsum or National Gyp or whoever makes gypsum product, they're not going to put it in their product anymore because they've all suffered the lawsuits
right.
from when they did. But so things started to get phased out in the friable arena in the late 70s. You're not going to find joint compound from 1982 that has asbestos in it. You will still find floor tiles.
Yeah. You
will still find caulk. You will find the glue underneath the floor tiles. Even up until into the 2000s. Into the new millennium, we've got those products that contain it.
It's funny. It sort of reminds me of fast food almost. Like it makes everything better, right? It's good. It just happens it might kill you too.
Yeah, right. It kills you, and if you have an exposure over long periods of time, everyday exposure to that stuff, you're gonna likely suffer some consequences someday.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
Yeah, you want to keep things out of your lungs. So
yes.
Your lungs are made to have air in there. That's really all your lungs want. It doesn't want dust, whether it's paper dust or asbestos dust or fiberglass dust. Your lungs don't want that extra stuff. Your lungs just want air.
Yeah, we could do another show on mold and on soot with exactly that same sort of
exactly
limit there. For now, I think we've been on for about 26 minutes here.
Really?
We'll wrap it up. Yeah, time flies when you're talking about asbestos. Yeah,
it's amazing.
So if anybody has any last-minute questions about asbestos, the law, the regulation, the dangers, testing, abatement, whatever, throw them in the comments. For now, we're going to do the prize drawing, and so if you've never done the prize drawing before, which would be a real shock to me, and would kind of hurt my feelings, here's what it is everybody, let's bring up the prize wheel. That's kind of the exciting thing for people. Right there it is. Everybody on this wheel, Lynn says, we love Stohl. They're the best. Great job, Chris. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Everybody on this prize wheel got one of these coffee mugs for the Serve Pro Mug Club, and they all have a number on the bottom. We register that number to this wheel here, and we draw a prize. And if you're watching and you comment so that I know you're watching, you will get a double prize. If you're watching right now and you're in the Mug Club and you haven't said hello, please say hi. Tell Chris you did a great job. Lynn is leading the charge here. We are going to draw the prize in just a sec, so you have a limited time to say hello. And I just want to say hi to some folks who joined late. Kathy, Betty, Holly, how you doing? Haley, Holly. Haley, how do I say your name? I don't know if I've ever asked you. I've been too shy, and I'm going to ask you right now. All right, let's bring this prize wheel up. Chris, I will let you do the honors. We're going to go for the spin.
All right.
And here we go. All right, we're up in the 400s here. Oh, the window's too small. That is 432. So that's going to be, you want to make the announcement? Oh.
Jackie Dietrich.
Jackie Dietrich from Abley. Jackie, if you're on, let me know so we can get you your double prize. Haley. I'm so sorry, Haley. I second-guessed myself. I was so stupid. Congratulations, Jackie. I will get you your prize. I will shoot you an email. Any last thoughts, Chris?
No, I already talked enough, apparently. 26 minutes, so enjoy your day, everybody.
We were on a roll. Yeah, have a good day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon, and hopefully you never have to deal with this stuff, but if you do, you can call us. Dan Bauer from ServPro, Chris Stohl from Stohl Environmental. Been a pleasure.